On April 30th, 2024, internet sensation Daniel Larson was arrested for threats he had made against various people and government establishments. Daniel has a long history of doing this, and after one particularly aggressive meltdown, the feds had enough, taking him into custody. If you don't know who Daniel Larson is and want to know his full story, I highly recommend my first video I did on him, simply titled The Daniel Larson Story. But a quick rundown would be that Daniel Larson is a homeless man with delusions of grandeur, believing that he is a famous singer and songwriter, and displaying an obsession for a fellow artist named Grace Vanderwall, posting almost every aspect of his life to various social media accounts. After a couple trips around the country, many meltdowns, and even more interactions with trolls, Daniel would find himself where he is today, in police custody. After Daniel's arrest, I didn't expect to hear from him for a very long time, but I couldn't have been more wrong. Because in the months after his arrest, Daniel would have a series of phone calls with various characters, both new and old, giving birth to a full-blown prison saga, which is the topic of today's video. The first phone call that was made public was between Daniel and his quote-unquote manager, Clark. It was a mere 2 days after his arrest, and in this call, Daniel explains exactly what happened, stating that he was at a probation hearing when the feds came. I assume this is the very last thing that his manager Clark wanted to hear, with many people believing that Larson's managers would soon be investigated themselves.
I'm doing okay. The feds pretty much got me.
The feds got you?
This time the feds got me. I went to probation yesterday, and sure enough, the feds were there, and they charged me with 7 counts of threats from the threats that I made. And not only that, the feds apparently are looking into Bob for his finances. They think that he's committing fraud. I did also talk to the public defender. I have court on Monday.
Okay.
Okay, and it is federal court. We're saying that I'm a flight risk and all the garbage. I don't have a violent history like anything like that. And they're also concerned that if I get back out, I will go back on social media.
Property of Larson League.
That's what the judge said, and you know what? I'm okay doing a little bit of time. Their biggest concern is apparently DDRC. They had to fully evacuate. And not only that, the FBI is still saying things about you, and not only you, but now the Discord server. As I know you're
Property
not
of
even
Larson League.
But anyways, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call you back. We might need to figure out a way to put money on my books.
One part that I found very interesting was him speaking of the FBI investigating Bob for fraud. Bob was a caretaker for Daniel and pseudo-guardian for much of his adult life. He gave Daniel astronomical amounts of money for various things, including his music career. Some might remember that Daniel Larson used to post pictures of his finances, sometimes showing himself being in massive amounts of debt. Those who know about the community that surround Larson understand that this is a troll, but the FBI are going to be looking into everything and everyone, at least to some degree. With the kind of threats that Larson made, they don't really have a choice. Another interesting thing that Daniel talks about is the DDRC. Contrary to what Larson might have you believe, Colorado has some of the best resources in the country for someone in his situation. And the DDRC is the Developmental Disabilities Resources Center. Daniel tells us that they had to completely evacuate the place after his threat. There was also a massive police response, including K9 units, so the amount of time and resources wasted by Daniel through this one action is unfathomable, as is the amount of people's whose lives he impacted that day. Larson made these threats a while back, just further proof that he has been under investigation for quite some time. Only 2 days after this call, it would be revealed that the feds were in fact looking into Daniel Larson's managers, Clark even receiving a visit from one at his job. This event would cause panic amongst Larson's managers, but even to this day it seems that that none of them have had legal issues. Unlike Daniel, who was in a lot of hot water, if found guilty and given the maximum sentence, he could be staring down the barrel of 60 years in prison. But this case is far from ordinary. Needless to say, Daniel's public defender had his work cut out for him. On May 9th, Larson's lawyer filed for his immediate release, stating that his detention was unlawful, but this was quickly shot down. A couple of weeks later, on the 24th of May, Larson's lawyer would file for him to be mentally evaluated to determine if he was even competent to stand trial. In my opinion, from a legal standpoint, this is the best thing that Larson could hope for. Instead of decades in a hardcore federal prison, he would spend years at a facility getting the help that he so desperately needs. Even though I'm sure Daniel's lawyer told him this, he did not truly understand it, and the longer that he spent in jail, the more he seemed to hate his lawyer. Not only did he want to be released immediately, but he also wanted to be provided housing with proper security. Even though Larson's greatest wish was to be released, he was only beginning the very long and rugged legal process that he would endure. Sometime around the beginning of June, Daniel would be transferred to the Inglewood Federal Detention Center. This Colorado detention center is home to some pretty notable criminals, the most notable of which was Jared Fogle, the subway guy, and absolute depraved sicko. I'm talking absolutely terrible. Inglewood seems to be a place where they put a lot of similar folk, I assume because of how heavily targeted they are in general population. The next notable thing to happen would be the 11th, where Daniel would be deemed unfit for trial, and after that we wouldn't hear anything about Larson for months. I believed that this was the end, that they had almost immediately transferred him to a facility, and we would never hear from Daniel again. But once more, I was so wrong, because a new character was about to enter the Larson-verse, a man called Little Sippy, also called Nicholas. Nick was well versed in the legal system, having a criminal record himself, one that does not allow him near schools. So he and Daniel had a lot in common, sharing many conversations together. The vast majority of people had no idea that Daniel was allowed contact with the outside world, but it seemed that the entire time that he had spent incarcerated, he was still making phone calls to people like Clark, Bob, and now Nick, who would post these recorded phone calls to YouTube, giving us one of the first glimpses into Daniel's life while locked up.
Hi, I'm doing okay. My lawyer hasn't been getting back to me at all. I haven't spoken to him since early August. The last time I talked to him, which was early August, right? He told me that I was never in contact with the Vanderwalls or the label, which is false.
You said...
Because I was in contact with Grace before, and her mother.
Yeah.
It's confirmed, and there's even conversations in my legal discovery over social media where Tina has admitted to talking with me, which is true, where she's told me to stop listening to the trolls. I made the threats to try to put an end to everything and drag everybody into the situation so I can handle things legally. Nobody's telling me why I'm incompetent. Like, nobody has been telling me anything. They've been saying that I've been doing things very well and I shouldn't even be in custody. And my big fear is I'm afraid that I'm going to have to plead guilty, because the thing is, if I plead guilty, then I don't think I can be with Grace. Because I told my lawyer I'm not going to plead guilty and I'm not going to even make a decision until I know what's going on with Grace. And unfortunately, the way things are going with my family and the way things are going in my life at this time, I'm thinking about just cutting ties for my safety. I'm going to call back, yeah.
Okay.
All right, bye.
Bye.
I believe that Daniel now had limited contact with his lawyer because he had been deemed incompetent. The lawyer knew that Daniel could add almost nothing of value to the case, and that speaking to him would be a waste of time. This call also gives us an insight into just how obsessed Daniel is with Grace. Despite being told by federal agencies and lawyers that Grace is not real, Daniel cannot accept it. He is fixated on the one aspect of his legal discovery that says he might have had contact with the real Tina Vanderwall once. He is truly unable to differentiate between the two parties, the troll Tinas and the one time that the real Tina Vanderwall contacted him. After talking about all the Grace stuff first, Daniel would call back later to talk about how his life had been incarcerated, painting a very bleak picture, one of mistrust towards Bob and guards who are very aware of his meme status.
You will not be charged for this call. This call is from
Daniel Larson. My, I guess, family friend, his name is Bob, who I've talked about on my media a lot. He was paying for a bunch of hotel rooms. So, he's manipulating, right, a lot of my finances, which is why I was homeless. All this issue that I'm in is partially because of him. It's been confirmed that I am the victim in the case. Which, yes, I did make the threats, and I admit to that. I've already admitted to it, so it's no big deal. I've stopped contact with trolls, and I want to make that clear. Anybody who's trolling, I have to cut ties. Yeah, so my own public defender is on purpose trying to turn me against Grace and trying to say that I'm not in contact when I've been fighting my case, arguing over the phone with my public defender. Look, I have been in contact, and I don't care what you're saying because my legal discovery proves. They have tablets, but you have to buy them, so I went ahead and bought it for $150. I have a cellie, and he's great. He sleeps during the day, so I'm kind of by myself. Yeah. And he also knows that, he apparently knows Grace because he watched America's Got Talent. One of the bigger issues that's been going on here at the jail is a lot of these correction officers, they follow me on social media. One of the correction officers came up to me here at the jail and talked to me about how Donald Trump wanted me to be his vice president. I don't know, but I've had one of the correction officers, like I said, come up to me talking about it, how they heard about it on the news. And I said I denied it. I didn't want to because I knew that it would be too much at the time, because this was back in 2023. I've learned over time, just with my current case that I'm facing, I don't always know a lot of information. So I have to investigate things myself. I have to make a lot of guesses whether it's right or wrong.
This theme of investigation would become reoccurring as Larson spent more time incarcerated. He believed that he was being lied to by nearly everyone, and that the only source of truth was what he could find himself. Larson had been given a legal discovery by his lawyer, and would continue to obsessively look through it, and talk about its details, particularly the ones referring to Grace. Nick would have another call with Daniel, but it was in his car, and the audio is so horrendous I didn't use it, but he non-stop talks about Grace. It seems like ever since the arrest, it's gotten worse, and I believe that it played a major factor in him being determined incompetent. As Daniel was peeling through any piece of legal information he could get his hands on, looking for reasons why he was in this situation, he would start to develop a theory that caused him great paranoia. Daniel has always had self-perceived problems with the singer-songwriter Jacob Sartorius. Trolls told him for a very long time that Jacob was his main competition when it came to the hand of Grace Vanderwall. So even though Daniel might act friendly towards Jacob sometimes, he sees him as nothing but a rival. And while sitting in prison trying to figure out what had happened, a realization hit Daniel like a ton of bricks, that his manager Clark was either Jacob Sartorius or Jacob Vanderwall, brother of Grace. All he knew was that something was fishy with Clark.
Hey, I got new information from Clark. Somebody met up with me in downtown Denver back in 2023, claiming to be Grace's brother. All of a sudden told me that it wasn't oops, pretty much said the word oops, as if he forgot, that he shouldn't tell me. He might have been spying. What I can say is people are, hacking my email. People are trying to stop my relationship with Grace.
What Daniel views as people trying to stop his relationship with Grace is in reality the advice of any person who gives a shit about him. But as we previously discussed, Daniel values Grace above all else. Some people know that if they stop playing into the delusion, Daniel might just cut them off. So they go along with it, and if at least one person tells him him that Grace is legit, he's gonna believe it. He cannot help himself. Inflamed by so many problems in prison, his obsession with Grace was at an all-time high. Daniel was very upset with Bob not giving him more money for Commissary. Daniel's a bit of a picky eater, so I guarantee you the prison grub was not cutting it. Even though Bob was putting some money on his books every week, Daniel did not view this as enough. And in another call to Sippy, weeks later, Daniel would vent his frustrations with not only Bob, but also at social media, which he claimed he would no longer participate in if released.
I haven't been able to check my emails because I'm completely out of money again. Everything that you are saying about Interscope Records trying to get me on contract along with Columbia Records, Taylor Swift being involved, all of that is true. Like my lawyer, I haven't spoken to my lawyer since I've last told you that I did. Everything is fucked. Like, I haven't heard any new updates. All my updates are from you, and you only. Right. I've been taking, I guess, therapy here. I just signed up for therapy here at this jail, too, which is supposed to count for therapy. So maybe I don't even have to get transferred because I'm just doing therapy here. Grace is supposed to be looking at houses and getting houses for us, or a house for us in Colorado. And she was supposed to do that back earlier this year. I don't have any updates. I don't know if she's even done that. I don't even really want to be posting my life on social media. I just want to do straight up music, some acting so I could get back into my acting stuff. But I don't want to post my everyday life. I ended up doing that to stay alive while homeless. Definitely. And then also, apparently, there's deep fakes going around of me. Yeah, I gotta go. I don't have much more time. There's a line for the phone, and I'm only out till 3 today. But it's good to know that if I don't get transferred, then they'll drop the case by December.
That last bit is probably the most interesting part of the entire phone call. Daniel saying that if he isn't transferred by December, he will be released, which is kinda right. Daniel had now been deemed incompetent, meaning that he would need to go to a facility until he was deemed competent again. These state-run facilities are notoriously full, so the judge said that if Daniel wasn't transferred by the end of the year, that he would be released, facing almost no consequence for what he had done. Learning this not only led Larson to dig into his legal matters even further, but also provided him a light at the end of the tunnel. His lawyer had been in very sparse contact with him. I mean, I can't blame him, the thing was pretty much done, and public defenders have other cases to handle. To Larson, all of this is unacceptable. He believes that not only has his public defender been lying to him, but also possibly conspiring against him. The day after the call I just showed you, Daniel would contact Nick again, this time saying that he had talked to Bob about the finance issue as well as housing that he needed when he was released. He would also discuss the poor conditions of the jail, giving us much needed insight into how his time was going.
I don't have much time to talk, but I was able to talk to Bob, and he is concerned about me possibly getting released, my case dropped or whatever. He is saying that it would be best if I could try to get it to where they drop it in November. Also to a point to where he's pissed off at Tina. He's the complete opposite of the Vanderwalls. He's pissed off at Tina for not moving with Grace, or Grace moving to Colorado, not owning up to their word. And I'm kind of the monkey in the middle, which is what led to this entire situation, with me even being in custody. He does not want me being transferred whatsoever. He says I'm innocent and he needs the case dropped. And he's blaming everything on Tina and Grace. Like I said, I've been with him in person. I've shown him, like, actual text. It's a mess. I mean, like, my safety is being completely violated in here. It's already been violated. I've filed multiple reports. I don't even have shampoo anymore. I haven't had shampoo in over a couple months. There's, like, literally stuff inside the jail, like, lights that are constantly out. Our sale is, like, everything is just falling apart.
It seemed that Bob had gone to visit Daniel in jail, and it also seemed like Daniel was having a very poor time there, talking about problems that he was having with other inmates, lack of supplies, and filthy conditions. Whenever Daniel's in a hard spot, it tends to impact him in more ways than one. Paranoia being the most prevalent. Whenever bad things start to happen, Daniel tries to connect the dots. Certainly there is a reason that Deion Sanders doesn't want to speak to me today. Maybe it's this security guard that's keeping me from doing it under orders from Tina Vanderwall. Stuff like that. So as Daniel sits there in jail believing that he is being mistreated more by the day, the conspiracy theories continue to flood in. He further establishes the Clark-Jacob connection and discovers that Bob may be up to no good with that dastardly Taylor Swift.
I think that Clark, a.k.a. Griffin, because he got me in contact with Grace originally. Somewhere along the line, he started trolling. Tina has always been, I guess, one day she's okay, one day she's another. I think she didn't quite believe or understand what was going on, and they wanted to help, but they didn't know how. And then Grace was already like, "Oh, let's move on with the relationship." Well, JoJo C was an adult. Taylor Swift's an adult. Ariana Grande is an adult, but that could also explain the collaboration that Taylor Swift wants to do, because she wanted me on her Eras tour, and I turned it down because I was homeless. And I really shouldn't have done that. I straight up told her, like, I can't confirm anything because you're not, showing yourself on camera. You're not doing anything. You know that video I told you about of Bob and the phone call where he's, like, saying, fuck Daniel, I hate him. I'll make sure I give a little bit of money to him at a time, but not all. He claimed it was photoshopped or AI. I believe that is actually real. Bob took me to the bank and told me to stay in the car. Well, Bob went inside and transferred money into my account. He's never done that before. That was the only time he's ever done that. And surprisingly enough, that one time he didn't want me going in because he didn't want us to see something or whatever, right? Or me to see something while I was in the car, like, hey, why didn't you let me go inside? And he wouldn't say a thing. He was silent, and I just shut my mouth.
It would seem that Nick or someone else has been creating AI conversations between Bob and Tina Vanderwall. When it comes to information about Larson, there are tiers. I guess a better way to describe it would be like a funnel. At the very top, you have Larson's managers. They know things the rest of us will never. We are at the very bottom part of the funnel, receiving that content and context much later, if at all. What I'm getting at by this is that anyone who's had a phone call with Larson has not recorded every minute. There are pieces that are edited out, and phone calls that are altogether not shared, causing vast speculation on exactly what's happening. It would seem that Clark was still in contact with Daniel but no longer posting their phone calls, and that Sippy was having secret ones of his own, which really makes you question what are they telling him. Nick and Clark are not connected. In fact, they don't like each other. So I assume that both of them are using this belief in Grace as a way to get closer to Larson and pry him away from the other. But that's just my game theory. The next phone call to take place would happen at the end of October, where a very confident Larson tells Nick that he's got it all figured out and that he will be released soon.
Do you know at all what's going on with Columbia Records at all? But I talked to the jail here, and I talked to the caseworker and the social worker here at the jail, and they're all just saying that I am not being transferred yet, and I'm not anywhere close on the list. I mean, at this point, I know what's going on. I know everything on what's going on. I understand it. I believe it's all just, a bunch of bullshit, and I really should be released from custody. And I have to, really try to figure out how things are going to work once I get out. That's kind of where things are now. When I was homeless, being out in, 20-degree weather, of course I'm not going to be doing that great. Anger overall, I don't really have anger issues. I can take a lot of stress. I made the threats because I was terrified and I was confused on why the record labels weren't paying me. And Bob kept telling me that I was never in contact with the record labels. And I was never in contact with Grace. And I was being told that by the FBI, too. I made the threats to try to get help.
Once again, Daniel blames his threats on his homelessness. He says that it was nothing but a cry for help, but the truth of the matter is quite different. Daniel has been offered extensive help, numerous group homes, programs, and people who were in his corner wanting the best for him. He threw all of that away for his self-perceived music career and internet presence. 2 or 3 years ago, if Daniel would have stopped posting and continued to live his life as he had before TikTok, today he would be a completely different person, in a much better situation. But instead, he has continued to place the blame at the feet of the very people who have helped him, causing those bridges to burn down only faster. A prime example of this would be how he's been treating Bob ever since he got into jail. Larson has always been hard on Bob, both for the financial help he gives him and other things. He has always believed that Bob should be doing more when Bob has no legal obligation to do so. He's not even related to Daniel. Him helping out in any way is already extremely generous, but Daniel almost never misses an opportunity to throw it back in his face. The day after the call I just showed you where he complains about Bob not giving him enough money, he would get on another call with Nick, completely trashing Bob, blaming him for completely ruining his life.
Hey, I don't have long to talk. I only have about 2 minutes I can talk. This year, I've lost so much money that I've not been making because I've been in custody. It's no longer a joke. Yeah, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Thing is, I'm to a point, my life is being destroyed by Bob at this point, and I don't think he realizes it. He was helping me previously, but it's to a point that he's saying things that without enough information and talking to people behind my back, like my lawyer. And I would have been doing fine if Bob would have just, got the apartment 1 month way back last year. Now to a point to where he's arguing about the amount that he's putting on my books and saying that, he can't do it that much more. If I was out this entire year, I would have made probably, I want to say 6 to 7 songs by now. I want to say that he's a big factor in my fan base falling apart because he was keeping me homeless at the time. And they didn't know that the money Bob was giving to me, a majority of it, I was saving behind Bob's back. And as soon as Bob found out, he would stop paying me. He would stop paying for hotels, and I would be back on the street. The Vanderwalls should have stepped up. Bob should have just went and got the apartment, not the hotel room, but just went and got the apartment, paid 1 month.
Bob is a senior citizen who you've attacked numerous times. One of Daniel's biggest problems has to be his narcissism and his delusions of grandeur. He thinks that the world revolves around him 100%, and that everyone else should not only inconvenience themselves, but bend over backwards whenever he says. When Daniel himself has helped almost nobody. If I'm being honest, I can't even think of a situation off the top of my head where Daniel did help anyone but himself. Bob has much bigger things to worry about, and I'm sure that if he could afford to give Daniel more money, he would. But many people who retired with a modest amount are now facing issues if they didn't invest well enough. Inflation and the rising cost of goods have made that money worth less. Bob might need all that money that he gave to Daniel at some point so that he doesn't become homeless. I don't know his situation, but it seems like everyone but Danny can understand Bob's position on this, especially with the way that Daniel treated him in the past. Another call of Daniel wouldn't be posted until around the 9th of November, once again voicing his displeasure towards not only Bob, but also the United States government, both of which he now planned to sue.
Now, it's now been over a week, and Bob has not gotten back to me. And today's the last commissary. The last time Bob sent me money was over 2.5 weeks ago. He told me to stop talking to Griffin and stop talking to you about him. And then all of a sudden, he just stopped communication. I need to get on the road. I need to get a driver's license. At this point, Bob is holding up my career. He's holding up my life. I'm like a slave to him as of this point. I'm a slave to the flippin' jail, because I've been thinking ever since before the election that as soon as the election's over, I'm guaranteeing that they're just going to go, okay, well, this guy's no longer a threat. This guy's telling the truth. He's getting out. I'm outsmarting the courts, and they're just making me look like a flippin' idiot. So I can sue them. I can sue the criminal justice system, the feds. And I put down as well Bob.
So it seems the last time that Daniel had contact with Bob, he was complaining about the lack of money that he was putting on his books. So Bob just cuts him off completely, which Daniel finds almost unthinkable. But Bob would stick to this, and we wouldn't hear any more news on him for a good while. The next big thing to happen would be actually somewhat outside of the regular people we cover when it comes to Larson. And it's strange to say, but it's his mother. On November 13th, Daniel's mother would sadly pass away. It seemed that she had been struggling with some medical issues for quite some time and finally succumbed to them. This was big news when it came to people following Daniel Larson, and when it was confirmed, people were very curious as to how Daniel would react. 2 days later, Daniel would talk about it in yet another phone call to Nick, saying that he knew she was gone, but there was something fishy about the whole situation.
I know the news with my mother, yes. I don't know anything about Bob. I don't know if something has happened to him or what, but he's to a point to where, like I said, he's not getting back to me. It's been 2 weeks. I've missed now 3 commissaries, and yesterday my $200 tablet that I can only get one a year, and it's the only thing that I have that keeps, me busy in my cell, just broke. So I'm like completely fucked. It's where I can rent movies for my cell, going up to other inmates and trying to sell autographs, but all these people saying things, I have no proof to prove otherwise, other than the phone numbers and stuff that I've got, addresses, and the conversations. I'm to a point I just don't believe anything. But the only thing I believe is the numbers with Grace and the fact that Griffin is in contact with the PR. Grace is really the one that I believe at this point. Griffin, I'm not sure if you knew this, but Griffin also admitted on the phone that Tina, right? He admitted that Tina promised to help me out and I would never get arrested again. He admitted that. I still haven't figured out my Colorado state ID that got stolen because the guy who stole it looked just like Jacob Sartorius, the Disney Channel star. Like, no joke. He looked 100% like him. And Griffin also looks 100% like him. It's weird as hell. Anyways, Griffin told me he wants to try to get me out of jail by Christmas. I told him if I can get Grace to agree to the relationship and get me out by the 25th, like he previously said, that would be best. Today's my birthday, yeah, and I was told by Grace back in January I would be living with her, so I'm pissed.
Daniel continues to believe that Clark is Jacob Sartorius, and seems much more concerned about Bob than his own mother, who he barely even discusses. Larson also began to talk about his growing fear of becoming institutionalized, saying that he did not enjoy his life in jail but was adapting. This didn't mean things were getting any easier. It actually seemed like Larson's antics were starting to wear thin with some of his fellow inmates. One day during a phone call with Clark, who was now recording them again, Larson would be confronted by an angry inmate wanting to use the phone.
Behind schedule on that. I've told my public defenders I'm behind schedule for the album this year. So I'm already fighting for 2 albums next year. I've already started that. It sounds like the relationship with Grace is real. But yeah, I can't allow that. I'm not gonna fight with you. I'm not. Yeah. I am on the fucking phone, and do you want me to fight you? Because, literally, I'm not gonna have this game. I'm on the phone with somebody. Relax. You're a fucking joke. You're 12 years old for getting upset at me for being on the fucking phone.
This video was posted to Flexburger's YouTube channel, but the day after, Clark would post his own video of a call with Daniel talking about the fight and other jail-related topics.
That fight happened yesterday, so your old cellmate, did he just come up to you in the unit?
It was in the cell after lockdown. And then he started saying, Grace is not in contact with you. She never will be. Your legal discovery states it. And I said, well, that's not true at all because you don't know the true facts. And my legal discovery is out of date. And he went all berserk over that. Besides that, I'm doing okay. I'm just waiting at this point. I mean, being on lockdown so much in a 6x or 8x4 cell. I'm just sitting here with my hair down to my chin until I get out because I haven't gotten a haircut all year.
Daniel Larson calls were being leaked by multiple sources now, from Clark, real name Griffin, and Little Sippy, real name Nicholas. Despite having this in common, they didn't like each other very much, and would usually talk bad about the other in calls with Daniel. Eventually Daniel picked up on this, and I kinda think he enjoyed being fought over, because as you'll see he played both sides, telling each one of them that he distrusts the other. He talked about this in his next call with Nick, as well as his belief that his mother had merely disappeared.
Not Bob, but Griffin and you are targeting each other. He's saying bad things about you, you're saying bad things about him, and I'm to a point to where it's like I really don't know what is which. My lawyer, my excuse my language, but my fucking public defender, I hate to cuss him out and everything, but he is not talking to me about what's going on with my mother after I've repeatedly asked him, what's going on. Nobody other than you has talked to me about what's going on with my mother. Bob was stopping me from talking to him, talking to my mother. So that is another problem. I've asked Bob for her number numerous of times. He's refused, and he told me that he is refusing to talk to her because he can't confirm if it's her or not. I do believe that, yes, there is evidence that Grace might be coming to see me very soon about the relationship and stuff. And I'm surprised why Grace isn't just, trying to get a hold of me at this point. If she's wearing free Daniel Larson shirts and everybody is in contact with her wearing those and all this crazy stuff's going on, I don't know why she should just 100% just be herself and just call me. Things are not looking good. It looks like I'm expected to be transferred sometime in December to Springfield if I don't hear back from Tina. I don't think they're going to do a bond. And if they do a bond, I'm pretty sure they're going to try to take all of my record label money and keep me homeless.
We can only speculate how much Bob has been contacted in regards to Danny over the years, and I think the reason why he wouldn't let Daniel speak to his quote-unquote mother is because he knew it was a troll. They have tried to use many different names to get to him over the years. Jacob Sartorius, Tina Vanderwall, the list goes on. I also think his public defender wouldn't want to say anything to him that would worsen his mental condition before he's taken to a facility. Daniel just always has to blame someone for problems that he's facing. And the longer that Daniel spent incarcerated, the more he blamed his lawyer. On top of this, he was telling Daniel that Grace was not real, which Daniel disliked even more, and had no effect on his obsession with Grace, which was at the top of his mind. While in jail, Daniel would listen to a great number of her songs. Then another realization hit him, that all of these songs were about him, and that this was further proof that his lawyer was lying to him. All absolutely delusion, of course, but this didn't mean he wasn't going to take it to people who would humor him, like Nick, who he called to explain his theory.
Hey, so I got the songbook. But there is a issue I also found out, and I was able to fully verify. We already know, right, that Tina is lying about almost everything. Another thing that I found out is if you listen to a lot of Grace's songs, they're 100% about me. Every single song. Without me, her career would be going down the drain. Grace wanted me to talent scout for her. And I guess her modeling or whatever she wanted to do, I don't fucking know, but she wanted me to become a talent scout for Interscope Records. They're trying to frame me now. And Tina, I think, because Tina did talk to the FBI, I was framed to admit to somebody claiming to be Tina. I don't think it was, but it might have been. I just kind of gave up and I started saying, whatever. You know what I mean? Because I was asked so many times. And not only that, another thing I found out, Griffin told me he wants to have me out by Christmas. But my public defender is saying, don't talk to Griffin, don't talk to you, whatever. Tina, we already know, is saying that. It's like Romeo and Juliet. She's tired of seeing me suffer, and that's turning into love. Yeah. Kind of like a victim and victim turning into victims loving each other.
Daniel has finally made contact with his public defender once again. Spoilers, but he'll be transferred to a new facility in a couple of weeks, so I think he could be checking in on Daniel before all's said and done. Daniel personally didn't believe that he would be transferred, but it was going to happen next month. Even though Daniel talks about his distrust towards Clark with Nick, he is still in contact with Clark frequently. He thinks that his lawyer is telling him lies, and that Clark and Nick are his only sources of truth. In his eyes, the public defender is not telling him the truth, so even though he's back in contact, he is still extremely upset at him, once again bitching him out to Clark on a phone call.
I just had a legal call for the first time since October, early October. And my public defender has told me to cut permanent ties with Bob, the real Bob, not an impersonator, the real Bob, told me to cut ties with Nicholas. Everything in the legal discovery is fake, is what he told me, not real information. And he told me as well that Grace doesn't want me, she doesn't like me, she hates me, and everything is a scam. It's scary as hell. Like, I do not know what's going on, and also my public defender told me that he did not know at all about my mother passing away, and I told him, well, I guess I'm going to sit here and suffer because you're doing nothing for me. But also, I know that you said that you were going to try to come visit me and was going to see if Grace can come too.
Yeah,
at some point. Is that even still an option?
This public defender had his work cut out for him. Once again, he tries to explain to Daniel that he was in contact with Tina once, that she threatened you with a restraining order, and then never spoke to you again. The rest of them have been trolls. Daniel has interpreted that as his whole legal discovery being fake, and when the PD starts talking about how Grace is too, he just assumes that everything else is. At this point in the time, Daniel has contact with his lawyer, Clark, and Nick. He has still heard nothing from Bob and received no money. The phone calls are free, but nearly everything else in the jail isn't. Daniel was able to procure a tablet that he could rent movies on, but he broke it in a fit of rage, which he has been having more and more of. Because not only are the stresses of the outside world getting to him, but so are the ones inside. With no money for Commissary and little to no understanding of how jail works, Daniel would submit commissary slips with no funds in his account. After being reprimanded, he began to seek out inmates to help him with his problem. Daniel had no ability to pay them back, so it was only a matter of time until he had issues, and he would once again call Nick around the end of November to talk about some problems that he's been having.
Hey, there's a major problem going on.
What's going on?
So Griffin is not getting back to me. Bob is not getting back to me still. My public defender keeps lying to me about Grace. Now that the relationship is confirmed real with Griffin, ever since then, Bob has gone completely silent. Won't answer any calls. I'm not getting money on my books. I got in trouble here at the jail from Commissary because I put in commissary slips without any money on my books because Bob just won't answer the calls. So I got in big trouble with Commissary over that. And then also other inmates now are buying me Commissary, which I owe them back. So issues are starting to show up. I have no clue why everybody is denying the relationship with Grace. And Bob wants me to cut ties with Griffin, but Griffin just also confirmed with me that he's been in contact with Bob for years. And I came forward yesterday to psychology saying that, like, this is illegal. That's what's going on towards me. And it's getting to a point to where it's really, like, I demand mental health treatment once I get out because I'm affected. And on top of that, it sounds like Bob all of a sudden wants me to put out more music on distribution, but my public defender told me my career's over.
Daniel has been calling himself the monkey in the middle for a while now. And that's because he feels that the truth is being thrown over the top of his head, that forces behind the scene want to keep him incarcerated to either steal his music or prevent him from playing a part in the election. Mostly it's the music. Larson began to theorize that Bob had signed some kind of deal with a record label behind his back, so when someone tells him that Bob wants him to produce 7 more albums, and Bob's not putting any money on his books, Danny assumes that all of that is just the theft of his musical wealth. He still hasn't had contact with the real Bob in quite some time, and now he's being told that his calls are leaking online, something which he confronts Clark on during their next phone call.
Are you still leaking the phone calls, or did that stop?
No,
I know that the leaking of the phone calls was a big problem. I feel like Bob was on purpose in conversation with the Vanderwolves. I believe he's lied to me. I believe he's in contact at this point. All along, right? And he lied to me saying he wasn't. And I believe that he pretty much chose, as well as the Vanderwolves, to keep me homeless. And then also, besides that, I mean, I'm just waiting. I'm kind of pissed off at the court lawyer for keeping me incompetent. They were manipulating me as well, saying one thing, and then it's like, well, in my mind, I was like, you can't really do that. And then they're like, well, anything else, because we can't talk about this anymore. And they shut me down. Well, that's illegal.
True.
From their point of view. So, I mean, even though they're doing it, I can still sue. Especially once I get out. And I already have the paperwork. I also told on the phone call to Nicholas that I was going to sue Bob. Which probably, if he got word of that probably pissed him off. No, I'm just a monkey in the middle, like I said, and I'm being pretty much framed in all this. It's ridiculous. Today's the last day I can get money for Commissary. I mean, they keep pushing it out, so I'm fighting right now. But today, I think, is the last day. So he really needs to get a hold of me today, because I'm trying to get new clothing in Commissary.
I would say that if Bob heard you were going to sue him, Daniel, when he's actively been paying you for nothing, could be a contributing factor to you guys no longer speaking. It seemed like Bob was aware of the phone calls being leaked and him being discussed in them, that being the part he really didn't like. I think he assumed that by no longer talking to Danny, he would no longer talk about him, but this only made Larson angrier. He blames Bob for completely ruining his life, saying that if Bob would have just gotten him the apartment, things would be so different. But Daniel has had housing many times before, and he's always been kicked out. The same thing would have happened at an apartment, and he would have looked for a different excuse to blame Bob for everything. He also thinks that Bob has been in contact with Tina Vanderwall to steal all of his musical rights out from under him, and that is also an explanation for lack of contact. Daniel has been crafting a lot of conspiracy theories since entering the clink. All he does is look at his legal discoveries, get angry, think about Grace, and come up with these conspiracy theories. He also started having a lot more problems with his fellow inmates. In a call with Nick on November 29th, Daniel would say that his fellow inmates knew all about his internet popularity and were now using it to piss him off.
There's a big issue going on here at the jail. All the inmates got, I guess, told their families or whatever to look up my popularity on social media, and other inmates were also looking at my legal discovery. And my case has certain things that are blacked out. And now the inmates have turned everything into a joke on purpose to try to piss me off. And I'm in PC. I'm in protected custody. Bob is not answering my calls. He hasn't been in a couple months now. Griffin is, every time I call him, he's just like, I don't know why you're not out. Tina's still playing this waiting game. She wants you out. I don't know why you're not out. My public defender is saying still that I'm not in contact and never was with Tina or Grace. And other inmates are saying that my public defender's still having court without me, and I've already been designated. So people are just saying things and doing things just to piss me off on purpose. But anyways, I gotta go. They're locking everybody down right now.
Daniel hadn't paid back any of the money that he had borrowed from inmates, and his transfer was just around the corner. I assume that the ones he borrowed from were upset with him, and that all of this was probably in an attempt to get Daniel to pay them. But I guess it just as well could be the other reality. Daniel was pretty popular online. A lot of people knew him. All it would take is one inmate to explain it all to everyone else, and those guys got nothing but time on their hands. But Daniel had bigger fish to fry. Grace was threatening a restraining order, and he was also having problems with corrections officers. During a call to Nick on November 30th, Daniel describes his jail experience as worse than ever.
Hey, just to let you know, this may be the last time I can call. Yesterday I got called out by the SIS, which is like the head investigators and I guess the head team of the jail. I got called out by them. They said they contacted Grace on my behalf when I told them not to, but that's beside the point. They went ahead and did that behind my back, and Grace is threatening a restraining order now. I don't know any other information other than that. I'm just going off of what SIS has told me. And then they've also told me to stop contact with everyone, or they will be shutting off the phone. Psychiatric is just telling me that, oh, you're doing great when I'm not. And I've told them that. I told them, I don't know who to believe anymore. My public defender is not doing his job. I don't know why I got deemed incompetent, and they're not talking to me about my case. I've been sitting here 6 months, and then psychiatric tells me that, oh, you're doing great. Last night after lockdown, the COs, like I said, told me to pack my stuff, and I was leaving. My case was dropped. I was getting out. I packed up everything. And then after I packed up, I started banging on my cell door and woke up my cellie because he was asleep. It was midnight. And then at midnight, here comes the CO back to my cell and is like, oh, we were just playing around with you. And I'm like, fuck you. You guys woke me up.
This would not be the last recorded phone call with Daniel Larson, but it would be the last one to date that Nick has posted. Daniel's growing distrust had shifted towards him, and after Daniel found out that he might have been using AI to manipulate him, it seems that he cut him off. It is unknown when their last conversation was, but this is the last recording. But the same cannot be said for Clark, who would post a call with Daniel the very next day, and this call is absolutely shocking. Daniel alleging that his cellmate got up to some P. Diddy-like behavior at his expense.
Grace threatened a restraining order. I have not spoken to her since I've been arrested, or at all. Okay? I don't know what is going on with that. My public defender, like I said, will not tell me anything because I just haven't spoken to her since I've been in custody, maybe not even this year. I don't know. But I've been threatened now over a restraining order by them.
Yeah.
And psych told me that, believe it or not, my mental health is doing phenomenal. They said my mental health is doing phenomenal, and I just sat there and laughed at them when I came back to my cell. I was like, my mental health is declining, and you guys are saying it's getting better? And then I start getting all these correction officers randomly threatening me and saying, don't talk to Grace. Grace. It's pretty much a threatening Grace if you really think about it. This is turning into definitely me being taken advantage of, and I'm not going to let that slide.
Oh no, and I mean, is your cellmate still messing with you, or have you gotten dealt with?
That situation is under control.
Okay.
I got a new cellmate.
Did they let you
I was with a previous cellmate that did me, but I reported it.
What the hell, Daniel?
Well, it was a lot more than just that, but he held me down and wouldn't let me move or whatever and tried to do some stuff, but I reported it, and he dropped that case and said it never happened. Because they didn't have proof, so that pisses me off too.
Yeah, that's wrong.
But
Did they let
they
you?
did move me out of that cell, and that guy actually got out of jail. He left to the halfway house.
Weird.
So that's not good either.
No,
if
that
he
guy.
goes to the same halfway house I was supposed to go to, then that's a safety concern. Way back in early October, right? Bob told me that my music sales got down to $12 a week. That's a big drop from 180 to 200 from what it used to be.
Yeah, that is.
So they're destroying my public image, and my sales are going down. If I get back out, I need to find a way to get housing fast.
If Psych really did tell him that his mental health is doing phenomenal, I would have the same reaction as Daniel. But at the same time, I am not a psychologist for criminals. I bet they see some pretty strange things. This incident regarding Larson and his cellmate is left to much speculation. I assume this is one of the numerous people that Larson has loaned money from. So it's very possible that this just could have been a fight and Larson misperceived it, or it very well could be what he's talking about. It is jail after all, one with people like Jared Fogle in it. I will say that for such a horrific event, Daniel doesn't seem too shaken up. He has this ability to compartmentalize better than anyone I've ever seen, finding it very difficult to connect action and consequence. Not that I'm saying what happened to him is a consequence of anything, it's a terrible thing. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm surprised that he didn't blame all of this on Bob. Larson also talks about his new fear of going to the halfway house, because his former cellmate was not punished. In fact, he was released, currently staying at the aforementioned location. Larson wouldn't have to worry about any more problems from this facility though, because the time of his transfer had finally come. Daniel would be transferred from Inglewood, Colorado to Oklahoma, now residing at the Cimarron Correctional Facility. Daniel would stay there until everything could be worked out at Springfield. And during this stay, he called Clark to once again complain about how he had been treated and the terrible conditions of his new home.
Okay, so I'm in Oklahoma because they don't transfer direct.
Okay.
I went on a private jet with the feds, okay, from Denver to Oklahoma with about 200 people on the plane. It's like a private commercial jet, and there was like 20 officers on the plane, and they were, I guess, trained also as flight attendants, but they were actual, like, Fed officers. And the flight was an hour and a half. I landed in Oklahoma City, and then I got here to Cimarron Correctional Facility. When the next plane goes from Cimarron to Springfield, then that's the plane I'm going to be on. So I finally got a hold of Bob, okay? Once again, I'm not going to be talking about him because he doesn't want that.
Okay.
So, first of all, you know the reason why I made the threat.
Yeah.
I don't want to keep talking about that. I'm kind of pissed off at kind of everybody in a way, because I felt like everybody was just talking and not actually doing or owning up to what they were saying. Like, just because I'm off the street, I'm doing better.
Is this facility better than the other one, or is it worse? Or?
No, it's. I don't want to say it's like the cells are like a porta potty.
Oh shit.
But it's like, you know, when you go to like a park and there's the cabins or whatever where the restroom is.
Yeah.
Or like a shower at like a sporting field.
Oh, okay.
It's like that concrete floor that's dirty as hell. One toilet that's about the same as like an actual porta potty or county jail, but the window is just one big gigantic window, floor to ceiling, so I can see out. Besides that, I mean, it's set up like kind of like Denver would be, Denver County Jail.
Yeah.
But it's run way worse. I don't want to hold up the phone and, you know, because it's costing.
Yeah.
When I get to Springfield, though, the calls are going to go back to being free.
Okay.
I do have to be careful because, I mean, just because of your past with you trolling, and I don't even want to say you were trolling because I don't think you were. Like I said, I think people are being over-judgmental. But I just want to let you know I'm doing okay.
Okay.
The only bad thing is I'm starting to get used to being institutionalized.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm in a cell so much, I'm just used to that cell life. And that's the only thing that's not good right now.
Yeah.
That and, of course, me and Grace, because I'm concerned about that, because, like, literally, we already know I care a lot about her and just our relationship and our tour that we were planning.
Despite Daniel's bleak new conditions in Oklahoma, he has re-established communication with the real Bob. I assume that somebody made Bob aware of this transfer, and he finally decided to forgive Daniel, knowing that any day now they could lose communication for the foreseeable future. I also think he finally got some things through to Daniel, the main one being that he didn't want to be discussed in Daniel's phone calls. It seemed like their relationship was healing for the first time in a very long time. And how fitting for it being around the holidays. It was December, Daniel was in Oklahoma, and it seemed like all hopes of him being released by the new year were now gone. Daniel would soon be transferred to Springfield, where he likely wouldn't have contact with anyone. And on Christmas, Clark would record the last public conversation with Daniel Larson to date, wishing him a Merry Christmas and discussing the future.
It does look like I'm going to be in custody at least another 6 months, maybe a little bit more.
Okay.
But I'm hoping to get...
You have 1 minute remaining.
Okay, we only have 1 minute. But I'm hoping to get out next, like, hopefully within 6 months to a year. So I have emergency news.
Is it good or?
No. So I am at Turkishay, Oklahoma.
Jeez.
In a stupid county jail. They moved me from the place I was at to here with no date on when I'm supposed to be moving. No information, nothing. Trying to do some sketchy shit and the sketchy things, and unfortunately, I am calling manipulation. I think that they are just trying to manipulate everything at this point, and they're just trying to do sketchy stuff, just like what you're saying. There's nothing. I'm in a cell with no books, nothing to read, nothing. Literally nothing. But all I can say is if I'm not at Springfield, at the medical place, by the 31st, on January 1st, my case needs to get dropped. Apparently, they did the competency evaluation without me. They're calling me a liar, and my legal discovery is acting like Tina or somebody, Grace, has legal guardianship over me.
What?
Which is very, very suspicious. And they've already found me the victim, but yet they're just throwing me across country in all these stupid jails, like it's a joke.
There was no.
And Bob just, is being kind of a jerk about everything. He's like, I need to change my behavior around. I need to change myself around. And I'm like, dude, like, how am I supposed to do that when you kept me homeless, when even my father said that you, meaning my dad, my mentor Bob, was straight up being the issue all along. It's ridiculous at this point. I do want to ask you, so the relationship with Grace is real. That's what we know, right?
That's what I don't know. Honestly, I don't know, Daniel, because I thought it was too,
Right.
but I don't know at this point.
I thought it was too, and then there's evidence to say that it was.
Oh,
And then I guess as far as Tina is concerned, I keep being told that she is concerned about future issues. I am too, but at the same time, I also don't know why they're not, there's no proof that they're helping. Because I keep being told by all the correction officers that I am on high security.
2 days later, Daniel would be transferred to Springfield, and no one has heard from him since. We have no idea how long Daniel will spend in there. No idea if he will be able to make more phone calls. For now, this is seemingly the end. I know I made this claim in my last video, but now I feel like it's more serious than ever. We will not hear anything new from Daniel for the considerable future, and that's probably how it should be. During his years spent online, Daniel's life has only gotten worse, causing himself and many other people problems. Daniel is nearly incapable of remorse, and this makes him capable of nearly anything. I believe that the level of trouble that he has brought people has been limited only by his access to resources. He is a legitimate danger to people. We can only speculate as to what horrors have been prevented by his incarceration. He is going to spend a considerable amount of time at this facility, and I think most of us consider that to be the good ending to the Daniel Larson story.